Hello everyone and welcome. In this video I'll be sharing my thoughts on The World Beyond Season 1 Episode 5, otherwise known as the episode with the Theelton flashbacks, because pretty much every episode of this show is the same. All they do is just change which character is getting flashbacks each week, so this week it's Elton's turn. Cool! Anyway, spoilers as usual, let's begin. In this week's episode, the group need to cross the Mississippi River and they spend much of their time trying to build a makeshift boat and scavenge for supplies to get across the river. And they also spend a lot of their time splitting up or saying that they need to split up to cover more ground, which is as annoying now as it was during last week's episode. Now I feel that I need to clarify something when making this criticism, and that is that I know this happens a lot on both The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead. I know characters do split up on those shows, but I can often overlook it on those shows because the characters are more experienced with dealing with the undead. I mean, for example, last week on Fear the Walking Dead, Dwight and Al were searching a house, and I think they split up and one went upstairs and one went downstairs. But I didn't mind that because I know these two are seasoned survivors and they can handle themselves. But when you've got a group of 4 young adults who struggle to kill one walker between them, continuously saying they need to split up or continuously splitting up, it's so damn irritating. Anyway, the group do manage to make a boat so they can cross the river, but it's not without its setbacks. And they have to deal with some walkers, and these walkers are housed in a building, and lightning strikes a telephone pole and the pole falls over and it hits the building and it creates an exit and the walkers come after them. And I just thought that this was the most convoluted way of getting walkers to our protagonist. I don't know why they did this, the whole lightning and hitting something and then hitting the house. I just thought this is really silly. The characters were making a lot of noise where they were trying to get the boat up and running anyway. You could have just said that walkers were drawn to that noise. You didn't have to, make this weird explanation of, oh, they're walkers in the house, but now they've been hit by something and now they can escape. I just thought this was a really convoluted and tacky way of getting walkers to our protagonist. And what's even more irritating is that after this point, the storm completely disappears. Now, I was hoping that because of this, we would see the characters sailing down the Mississippi, having to deal with not only being on a crappy makeshift boat, but also a storm as well. But nope, the storm just disappears and this entire boat sequence is completely washed over, excuse the pun. It's basically skipped over, they fix the boat, and then the next scene is them at a camp. So you don't even see them go down the river, which I'm guessing is due to budget constraints, but still it's pretty disappointing because that should have been the climax of the episode in my opinion. Before the group manage to get the boat up and running, it does break down a couple of times and they need someone to go underneath the boat and try and fix it. And they suggest that Elton is the one to do this because he's the smallest one out of their group. Elton does initially refuse because he has claustrophobia, but he does eventually find the courage to go underneath the boat and do it. Now, I'm not an expert on claustrophobia or an expert on many things, to be honest, but I did a quick Google search of claustrophobia and it shows that it can be triggered by a traumatic event in an enclosed space. Now, there's a flashback of Elton when his dad puts him in a box when he's a kid because there's walkers outside the building surrounding him, so he puts him in this box and tells him to hide in there. So it's up for debate whether he already had claustrophobia before that point or whether this was the triggering event that caused it. And if it did, I can certainly understand why someone would get claustrophobia if they've been put in a box, whilst they're undead around and the world's going to crap and your dad's left you. So I can understand why that would cause Elton to be the way he is if that was the case. For what it's worth, I actually think the Elton flashbacks were probably some of the best so far we've had this season. I mean, the guy who plays his dad was perfectly cast. He looks exactly like the Elton, the adult Elton that we have in the show currently. And Elton's story, although not exactly original, was passable enough for me and I didn't mind it. However, the problem that I'm having with all these flashbacks this season is that I watch them and I just think to myself, these flashbacks are more interesting than the actual show itself. I would rather the show be set during these events rather than it being set now. In the Elton flashbacks this episode, we see that he comes out of the box and he goes in the corridors of the building and he finds his dad dead, and then he goes outside and he picks up like this little flyer, and on the flyer it says get to the university campus, which he was at in the first episode, and it has a map on it, and that's an evacuation point. So this 5-year-old kid, I think he's 5, however old he is, this kid then has to make the journey to this camp to get to safety. Now that's the show I'd rather be watching. I would rather be watching a show about a young kid trying to survive and trying to go on a journey to safety, because it just seems so much more interesting than what we've got at the moment. It's revealed later on in the episode that the pregnant lady that Hope killed when she was younger is actually Elton's mum, and I like this. I think it's a pretty cool reveal. I wasn't expecting it, but at the same time I just kind of think I would still rather see a show with a young Elton, the Elton in the flashbacks trying to get to safety, and then he crosses paths with Hope and Iris and finds out then that they killed his mum, because again, it would just be more interesting and more unique than what we have. This is going to sound like a weird comparison, but I get the same feeling watching The World Beyond that I did when I watched Batman vs Superman. Now I think that Batman v Superman is an absolutely awful film, but it doesn't matter. I'm not going to go into why I do, I just don't like it. But it's kind of hinted in that film that Ben Affleck's Batman has a pretty cool backstory. I mean, Jason Todd is dead, his partner, and Batman has his suit on display, and it's all been graffitied in sort of catchphrases, taunts from the Joker, and I think he's holding the crowbar in his hand, which was used to kill Jason Todd. And that's a cool backstory, and when watching Batman vs Superman, I just couldn't help but think that I would be rather watching a film set during that time, during those events, rather than a film in which Batman, Superman and Wonder Woman fight a villain who looks like a giant turd. And that's exactly how I feel watching The World Beyond. Every time there's an interesting flashback, I just think, God, I would love the show to be set then, not now. At least the episode does end on the cliffhanger of them actually encountering another human being. Finally, it's only taken them, 5 episodes on the road to actually meet someone? I should be excited that they're finally meeting another human who could pose a danger, but I just think with how inoffensive this show has been, I don't think they will be a danger. I just think they'll be a nice person and they'll talk to them and carry on with their journey. I'm getting the same kind of vibes that I did from Fear the Walking Dead 4 and 5, where everyone is being all nicey-nicey to each other and none of our protagonists are in any real danger. So I should be excited for this cliffhanger, but I don't really think it's going to deliver. I have to admit, I did actually think the scene when the characters are trying to push the boat in the water and escape from the walkers which are coming, I thought that was actually a pretty decent set piece, but I still couldn't really get invested in it because of 2 issues. And the first one being is that I don't think anyone's going to die in the show, because we're 5 episodes in and not one character has died, which is unheard of in a Walking Dead show, so I didn't really see the characters as being in any danger, so there was no tension. And reason number 2 is that I'm still not really attached to any of these characters, so despite how good this scene actually is, this isn't a bad set piece, still don't really care. It seems to me that instead of spending their time creating characters who are likeable, the writers of this show just think that if they put in a flashback of them having gone through some kind of traumatic event, then we're automatically going to like them, which is why every single character on this show has either had flashbacks or they've told their story via a conversation like Huck did in this episode, in which she mentioned her near-death experience to Hope. But the issue is, it doesn't really matter what these characters have been through previously if they're just so damn unlikable and boring now. Okay, Elton lost his dad and had a hard time at the start of the Walker outbreak, but then that doesn't mean I'm going to automatically like him, because I don't think the show's doing enough with him now. Okay, Felix was cast out by his family because they don't agree with him being gay, but that doesn't then outweigh some of the stupid decision making that he's made on the show lately. Yes, Hope also went through some traumatic events. Her father left her, she ended up killing Elton's mum, her mum died, but I still find her to be irritating and hot-headed and doing a lot of stupid things that she shouldn't be doing. So I don't think that just because these characters have tragic backstories, that doesn't automatically, to me, make them likeable and make them forget about everything, all the stupid stuff they've done since the shows began. Anyway, another quick complaint that I want to mention is that I didn't like what seemed like to be a forced confrontation between Hope and Felix, because Hope finds out that Felix is trying to convince Elton to get the group to turn back, and then she kind of flips out and she says something to Felix like, "Oh, were you going to wait for us to go in the water and try and sink the ship," or something like that, try and sink the boat. And I was just thinking, what? Are you mad? Okay, yes, he wants you to turn around, he wants you to go home, but he's not going to try and sink the bloody boat when you're in the river, is he? And risk killing you all. I was like, where has this come from? Speaking of Felix, at least I liked the part of the episode when he used some kind of like fishing rope to wrap it around the trees and catch walkers, which I thought was actually quite clever. And I didn't mind the action scenes with the walkers this episode. It was pretty good. Although whoever this is on the right, I can't remember if it's Hope or Iris, they kind of need to learn to stay on their feet a bit instead of like doing NFL tackles on walkers, because what is going on here? But the action scenes, they weren't actually half bad. And that's The World Beyond episode 5. More flashbacks combined with more scenes of characters who I have little or no connection to, and that's pretty much been a summary of the entire season so far. Again, 5 episodes in, and I don't think there's been one episode without flashbacks, so hopefully they're all out of the way now. I'm praying, and hopefully they can actually move the plot forward, because in 5 episodes, it's taken us 5 episodes for them to actually encounter another human, and finally maybe something interesting will happen. They might be a danger, although, like I said, I'm still not sure about that. But yeah, this has been a very poor half a season of a show. I think the show's lucky that it's only got 2 seasons, really, because it would be cancelled. It would be cancelled after this first season if it wasn't already, a limited time series, just because I think no one's watching it. No one's watching it. Why am I watching it? I don't know. So it's not been good enough. Not been good enough at all, in my opinion. 5 episodes left, so let's hope it gets better, but I'm not counting on it. So there you go, that's my thoughts on The World Beyond episode 5. Depressing as usual. Let me know your thoughts below. Did you like this episode? Did you hate it? Do you agree with me? I mean, for the record, I actually think it was better than last week's episode, but I still don't rate it. I still don't think it's a very good episode. So, yeah, let me know your thoughts below, and take care, and I'll see you all very soon. Goodbye.